I suppose that the week of prayer for Christian unity is really following Christ's mandate that we all should pray that we may be one. Although I think sometimes there's always a danger that we can overlook the second part of that. It's that we will pray that all may be one, but so that the world may believe in him who sent him. And I think the thing we tend to forget, I think that we've always thought of the missionary movement as being a geographical thing, a thing that moves through space. But I think also it's a question of relating to others who carry the name of Christ and those who perhaps never even have heard of the name of Christ. So I think that's part of it. I'm sometimes asked, that's why I think we should be praying for unity. Sometimes, in fact, quite frequently, I'm asked the question, well, why only for 1 week in the year? And I think, well, first of all, some countries had celebrated during Pentecost. But I think I would prefer to see it rather as, when we have something like a road safety week or a road safety day, we're not suggesting we should all drive like madmen the rest of the year. I think it's something that's meant to inspire us and to spill over into the rest of the year. The way in which the actual material is produced, it normally a theme is selected and then it is worked over in a particular country. Ireland has had the privilege of doing this 3 times over the years. This year's Week of Prayer for Christian Unity is coming from Korea. In a sense, a bit similar to our own situation, where you've got a kind of an overlap at times between a religious dimension and a socio-political dimension as well. So maybe I think we can look at it, I think, through the spectacles of the last 4 decades in our own country, and I think in that sense we'll be that little bit more enriched by it. The theme is all about reconciling. The actual theme is reconcile your people. And I like the way it looks at it this year. It looks at reconciling and coming face to face with difference, with violence, with poverty, with creation, with prejudice, with pain, with difference, and with hope. Difference comes into it twice, because one of the times it's looking at it for the kind of intra-Christian communities, and then other times, the second time it's really looking at it in the wider context of world religions. How is it celebrated? Well, I think in my time in the ecumenical scene, I've probably seen a big change in this. I remember when I started, there was the big blockbuster, have it in the cathedral or the Anglican cathedral, or, when it was the big jamboree, not quite with tents and that kind of thing, but it was that kind of thing. But it didn't really filter out very much. Now, I think people could look at this and say, well, you don't have just as many or just as big of those. And that is probably true. I mean, our own diocesan ones at cathedral level, if you excuse that expression, is probably smaller than it used to be in numbers. But for the one of those that existed 25 years ago, there'd be scores of that kind of thing happening in different local communities and local churches throughout the diocese or the circuit or the Presbyterian areas or whatever. And I think that's probably the biggest change that I've seen, that it's filtering through into other areas. And indeed, every year, our advisory committee on ecumenism produces an annual report where it actually outlines the kind of things that are happening at diocesan level. And it's very clear from that how the number is increasing. And I think that is important, because when we're at international gatherings, the question's often asked, well, how do you get it to the level of people in the pews? And I think to some extent we've managed to do that. The other question that I am sometimes asked is this one about, well, how optimistic, and it's related maybe to what we've just seen, how optimistic are you about the future of ecumenism? And I think you either look at the big jamboree and say they're going down, or you look at the other one and say, well, they're increasing in number. It is the original half-full, half-empty question. And I think really, all I would say is that as we try to come closer to Jesus, then I think we are in fact going to come closer to each other. We all have the opportunity of helping, of committing ourselves to ecumenism at all sorts of levels, all the way through from the international level, the national one, the diocesan one, to the ordinary kind of social thing where people are breaking down prejudices or barriers or suspicions, just maybe through some purely social contact. And I think it's for each one of us to say, there is a level where I could make a contribution. I think we have to try to work certainly at reconciling differences and tensions between ourselves and other denominations. I also think there's a great deal to be said about trying to keep, I don't like the word monolithic, but trying to keep a certain kind of a discipline and an orthodoxy within each tradition. I had the privilege recently of being present at the one of the Catholic representatives, of the 10 of them, at the Lambeth Conference. And the Anglicans, as we all know, are going through a certain amount of difficulties and internal tensions at the moment. Cardinal Casper made a wonderful contribution where he said, well, he was talking about that. He was saying, look, he said, if there's division in any particular denomination, then it becomes much more difficult for others to relate to it. So those are just a few of my thoughts on this wonderful week of Prayer for Christian Unity. And if people are interested in just finding out more about what is happening this particular year, obviously their own diocesan advisor in Ecumenism is one of the central things, but all of this material now is very readily available now on the Churches, Council of Churches for Britain and Ireland's website. And but also I think at the more local level, that will only deal with the national ones, the international ones. At the local level, then I think the Ardley Parish Bulletin will make reference to please God, to copious events that are happening throughout the country.